A lot of these people had been in the hospital years, totally institutionalised, but a lot of them needn't have been in there.
Mental illness and people suffering mental illness are to some extent an unknown quantity, and that you have no real idea about until you begin. And obviously in the first place I was wary whether the patient happens to be a depressed patient or a manic patient, or people who might put themselves in danger, or on the elderly wards where they might be possibly interfering untowardly with a fellow patient. Nursing assistants are there primarily to keep the place safe, and it's not bad really to be able to say you've done something like that.
I think my fondest memory was when we had a reunion for the RAF. Rauceby was number 4 RAF hospital. It was the most memorable and moving day I think I can ever remember, because we had been given a book full of photographs of these men that had been brought in very, very badly burnt and injured. One man came to me and he literally had no hands, just the palms of his hands. His fingers had all gone. And he went through the book and he sat there and he'd got tears in his eyes, for so had I. And he said, I just wanted to see my hands for the last time when they had fingers on them. So it was a really, really moving day.
My keys. Well, we all had keys like this. The hospital was, if you looked at it in the plan from above, it was like a butterfly on a board with 2 sets of wings, a set of wings and a body. One set of wings was the male wards and the other set were the female wards. This is what the hospital was like, walking around, letting yourself in and out of wards and offices and so on. It wasn't a secure hospital, I have to say. The wards are locked merely to prevent people who are confused, dementia cases and things like that from getting lost, which used to happen occasionally if somebody walked out of Rauceby into the grounds, and we had many acres of grounds. So yeah, these were my office keys.
When the hospital was originally opened, patients went in there and they weren't allowed to leave. There were very many human stories in there of patients. And we had one gentleman who was brought in when he was a boy. The only reason he was brought in was he'd been caught by the village bobby out scrumping for apples in an orchard. Now, poor old Blanny, he had the most terrible stammer. They thought he was an idiot. And he was brought in, and everybody knew Blanny. He would come in the library, and because I would have time to sit him down and I could actually get him to talk to me, he was always willing to do anything. So they set him up with a car cleaning business. So we would drive into work in the morning, pop your car round to Blanny and pay him, I think we used to pay him £1, and he'd clean your car. And I don't know how much money he made, but he must have made quite a lot. And he went in at about 14 and he was 80 something when he died. Women had no rights, and so if a man felt that his wife was being a bit naughty, he could easily get the doctor to sign her as having moral turpitude, and she'd been bunged off into an asylum. Girls would have an illegitimate child, and they could be put in an asylum. And in fact, at one point in our hospital, we had a mother and her daughter in there.
There was a divide between the community and the hospital, and there was still a very large stigma about mental health.
In my youth, if you had like the village idiot, which was quite common in these rural villages, you avoided them and they were an embarrassment.
Somebody had applied for a job at Rauceby and they were house hunting in the neighbourhood. The person who was selling them the house didn't know that they were going to work at the hospital and said, it's a great place around here, although you will sometimes hear the sirens go off at the hospital when an inmate escapes, as he called them, which was total rubbish. It was just the weekly fire alarm test. But to some of the locals, that was the idea they had. It was like an asylum. We had very little vandalism, for example, from local youth, because they were frightened that if they went into the ground, you know, these mad axemen would set upon them, which again was another fiction.
Could you tell us about the conservatory?
The conservatory was beautiful. It was a later addition to the hospital, but it was a typical Edwardian conservatory with tiled floors, with water tanks underneath, and at one time they were growing grapes in there, and they would grow flowers for the hospital in there, and the patients, those who wanted to, could go and help with the gardening in there. It was absolutely beautiful. Because I so loved the place. I would have done the job for nothing, only I didn't tell the management that. And I thought, I heard that all these other hospitals were closing and just disappearing. And I thought that was wrong.
Looking at the ruins, stroke what's left of Rauceby Hospital, it's interesting to see how it is, and the fact that you were at one point walking around it as a full-functioning, busy, thriving place.
It's a funny experience to see it missing, because it was a community.